I am a non-technical person who has always tried to get non-technical people access to technology.
This is Jeremy, an entrepreneur that went from making $15 an hour and drowning in debt to building TaxMagic, an automation tool that has made over $2 million on a marketplace called AppSumo.
When I turned 30 years old, I was making $15 an hour. I had 6 figures in debt. Before we launched on AppSumo, I had to convince my wife to co-sign a loan.
He's also behind several products that make up what he calls the Lazy Empire, a growing portfolio of tools built for everyday people.
You have to pivot your way to success. You have to constantly be listening to customers, and I say customers because users don't really help you if they're not paying you anything.
Jeremy spent years failing, pivoting through a dozen ideas, selling what works, and learning one truth that shaped his entire career.
I don't want to pay monthly for everything. Everything I've been doing in my entrepreneurial career has been around that through line of getting people technology and never charging too much. And we built the community, the Lazy Empire.
TaxMagic wasn't his first hit. It was a result of years of trying, iterating, and solving problems for people like him. People who just needed access to tools without paying a fortune. Today, the Lazy Empire has become a movement, and in this episode, it breaks down how he went from being a broke accountant to being a multi-product founder, and how he turned every failure into momentum. Alright, let's dive in. Welcome to the channel, Jeremy. For those who don't know you, can you please give us a quick intro of who you are?
I'll start from the beginning. I am a non-technical person who has always tried to get non-technical people access to technology. That's always been like my major through line throughout my entire career. Every venture I've ever started has always been around getting someone access to something that I didn't have while I started my entrepreneurial journey. So like I grew up like more or less really poor. So like I didn't have access to computers or internet when everyone else did. LimeWire, Napster. I didn't have these things. I'd like go over to my friend's house to do it. So I've always kind of felt that in the bottom of my soul. I buy things because they're inexpensive or cheap. I don't want to pay monthly for everything. Everything I've been doing in my entrepreneurial career has been around that through line of getting people technology and never charging too much and trying to make sustainable deals. And we built the community, the Lazy Empire, and it's grown to now almost 4,000 people, and it's like a private group even. So figuring out ways to expand that and make more into that group is something that is very near and dear. So that's a little bit about me.
That sounds like an awesome thing to do. So what led you to start building SaaS tools in the first place?
You ready for this? This right here, dude, is a plaque for being the outstanding member of the year for the Department of Accounting and Information Systems at Michigan State University. I was fucking accounting, dude. Even in school, people were like, you shouldn't be in accounting. And I found that out 8 months in after like essentially getting fired. I wasn't good with authority, I don't think. Like, I really don't believe anyone would hire me to do something that's not like consulting based. When I turned 30 years old, I was making $15 an hour. I had 6 figures in debt. Before we launched on AppSumo, I had to convince my wife to co-sign a loan. After launching our first product on golden trophy here on AppSumo, this was my first foray into like the LTD community at all. You know, we were able to branch out from that. We were able to build the community from that, build the YouTube from that, and it worked out.
And now as an entrepreneur, you've built multiple successful tools, including TaxMagic, which is your flagship product. But I'm pretty curious to know, what was your background before all of that?
One of my earliest products, my very first product was the original version of Air 5, dude. It started as a digital business card. It was 2015, I think, so it was a decade ago. And we were able to monetize that stage at least 20, 30, 40 grand. Enough to pay some engineers, pay some staff, give myself a little bit of money, but I still had to work like a side hustle. And I did that for years. Everything the company got, I put back into the company, made sure the engineers could still develop things. That pivoted to a college alumni networking app. And then I pivoted it to a drink subscription. We did that. Like that was probably the most successful. We were able to get like at least hundreds of subscriptions. Every pivot I made, so there were like maybe a dozen different companies, I sold those to. And then we would sell that a couple dozen times to non-technical people. And the one thing I learned was you have to pivot your way to success. You have to constantly be listening to customers. And I say customers because users don't really help you if they're not paying you anything.
Pivoting your way to success. That sounds like a very strong point. But why do you think that paying users bring better value than regular users?
It's because yes, they're paying like one time or twice, or maybe they'll get your other product, or maybe they'll buy some more usage down the line, but they have swiped their freaking card for $200. They've given you money. Their opinion is valuable. That is where I try to get entrepreneurs to listen. I guarantee you right now, if I came to you and I said, hey, listen, I have this idea. What do you think about it? And you're like, that's pretty good. I kind of like it, because you don't want to be an asshole. But if I come to you with the product built and I say, what do you think? And I go, it's done. And you go, oh yeah, it's pretty good. And I go, well, okay, will you sign up? Will you buy it? And you're like, what's the real feedback then? Why can't I get you to swipe the card for just $50? I feel like it's listening to paying customers constantly and then trying to the best of your ability to pivot in the way that they want it. So those opinions really matter.
So let's talk about TaxMagic, your flagship product, which was previously called Air5. It has made millions on AppSumo, but can you please tell us how the idea came about?
When I first started Air5 in 2015, I was using Zapier, and I used Zapier to connect everything that I had going. It was like the first version of Air5 was almost just like a type form and like a Google spreadsheet and like an e-commerce site, like a WordPress website or whatever. With Zapier, I could connect those. And then a few years later, I was like constantly using Zapier. I constantly was getting frustrated with Zapier because it just wouldn't click that button, or I just wanted to go, can this thing type in that field there? So then we built this browser tool where you could just go simply click the button in your flow or type in the field in that flow. I always wanted to build that thing and it didn't really exist. That's how it kind of came about. Then it just killed on AppSumo and we were able to grow from that as well and like have a customer base from that.
Speaking about growth, TaxMagic has obviously come a long way, but you got your first few customers with a scrappy MVP you built on Bubble. How were you able to get people to actually pay for something like that?
That I think is the mark of a great entrepreneur. Like, can you sell nothing? Like, it's not even selling an investor on where you can go with something. Can you put things together, make it look like a product that you can sell? Don't do that on a large scale, but you can definitely do that at a smaller scale. Everyone kind of does that at the beginning. The founders of DoorDash, they didn't have drivers. They were the drivers. They didn't have connections to the restaurants, but they made it appear as though they were the restaurants, right? They put the restaurants' menus on their website. Then they would get the order, and behind the scenes, they would call the restaurant, order it with their credit card, go get it and deliver it. That's what TaxMagic was doing at the beginning, as it was like a type form, a Webflow, like a custom Webflow website that people can just go in there and essentially with a form make their flow, and then we would build little pieces to connect them on the back end manually. So like we would go, all right, boom, here's your flow. So that's kind of how it started until you get the first like 50, 100 customers where it becomes too much. Then you're like, we have enough market validation here. Now we should build this into the real tool.
Looking at your products and community, I noticed a strategy of building fast and selling early. Why is speed so much important to you, and how do you decide when something is ready to start charging for?
Your most precious resource is time. So you have to move fast. And if you are moving fast, you're going to break shit. I know that's a big cliche, like move fast and break things. I've seen too many people fail because they've put so much money into something that had no revenue. If you come to me and tell me that you can't get any revenue from an MVP, you probably shouldn't build a thing. I built what seemed to be an app builder from just like an e-commerce website. And dude, we made on that at least $500,000. You can get a website, put up a website, make something no code on the back end for 10 people. And you should do it fast. Anything you can to get your first couple paying customers in. And you'll go out of business if you don't move fast, right? Because like if you will run out of time or you will run out of money But if you're not paying attention to time, you will definitely run out of both.
Speaking of how failure can happen in business, you actually had a moment that actually tested you. And that was when Zapier removed TaxMagic from their app store. What's the real story behind that, and how were you able to fix it?
Yeah, so that was a big honestly, that was my most vulnerable I've ever been, man. Because the week we launched on AppSumo, they took our app out of the app store because they called us a competitor. But we did browser-based things. We didn't automate APIs at the time. Then we took the open source version of Active Pieces. They just made they are literally the open source version of Zapier. That's their calling card. So we knew we could take that and integrate it, and we would have the Zapier side, like a watered down version of the Zapier side. And we were so distraught that they took our app out of the app store, because at this point we had no idea what we were gonna do. And now we were launching on AppSumo, and we told everyone there was a Zapier app, and we're like, oh my God, what? I was so pissed because, you know, then again, the AppSumo people get pissed because you're like, you said there was this and this and that. Some people just don't understand, or they go, you're a liar. But yeah.
Unlike other non-technical founders who I've interviewed who actually had to figure out the coding parts, you actually run a lean team of coders who work on multiple projects. How do you manage to keep your team lean while working on multiple things at once?
We have all of these tools like internally that we use because it's just like we have fun with them. So like just fun, like I'm a builder. So like there's an open source version of Slack. So we take that open source version of Slack, we use it internally, we fuck around with it, we customize some shit, you know? Or like we go, all right, well, we'll use that. We don't want to pay for Slack. So we just manage it. We do that part. Or the database tool, like all of these things that we just take an open source version, customize shit, and then use it. And we're like, all right, we'll just release this to the community. And how we do that is we bring on one engineer every time, every product to do it. That's how we kind of hire an engineer. We'll prove that they can do those things, and then they maintain it. While they're maintaining that piece, they work and flow on other apps. Each product brings in its revenue to support that engineer, and then the floating with the margin. So yeah, it seems to be working good so far.
Let's talk about branding and marketing for a little bit. Your brand is called The Lazy Empire, and for some people that might pass the wrong message about entrepreneurship. What's your take on that, and how did you come up with that name?
Here's what I've begun to believe is that you need to have thought what you just thought, which is the lazy empire. Like, well, I'm not lazy. You could get upset about it and be like, I'm coming in and seeing what's going on. You need to evoke some emotion from a customer, from something, because dude, hate is a very valuable emotion. You don't want someone to see your thing and not feel anything. But when you hear lazy empire, you feel something about it, right? Like, what is this? Who is this guy? You know, there's something. Or like, I've struck a chord. If you're not striking a chord with someone, I don't think you're gonna do very well. But the lazy part of the empire is like, everyone wants to automate shit. That's the version of me leaning into like, dude, OBM is being lazy. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm doing. Everyone wants to work less and make more. Why not lean into it?
I've noticed your marketing strategy across your multiple products rely heavily on cold DMs. How do you approach that, and how do you know when it's working?
When I started Air 5 originally, before I got out of bed, I would send about 40 to 50 cold DMs in order to that to come to one sale for each day. So it's like one win for every 50 to 100 messages, which is like a 1 to 2% success rate. So if you send 100 messages, 99 of them in my head are not going to convert. One will. So how many messages will you send before you get out of bed that you know, right, by the end of the day, one of those 100 or one of those 50 or 60 will convert? So it's like my success rate has been like 90 or like 2-3%.
A lot of people struggle with sending messages and not getting responses. How do you deal with that, and what advice do you have for someone that's trying to stay motivated through that?
The feeling that you're feeling when you don't want to do it, or you can't keep up with it, is like the reason why other people quit. If you listen to that and you go, you don't want to do it today, but you know you need to do it today. That right there is how you separate yourself from the competition, because the competition is feeling that exact same way. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? The people who are trying to get what you're trying to get also feel like that. So you know that, and you know every time you move on, there's a 99% chance that they gave up. So you just have to know that in your head, and that kind of makes me feel always a little better.
I know we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to wrap up with one final question. If you had to start over from scratch with the same knowledge, no product, no money, no audience, what would that look like for you?
That makes me want to puke in my fucking mouth. I'm not as bold to be like, I can do it again. I'm not that bold, dude. It takes time. Every business is different. The one thing I know that would give me comfort is you will get what you want if you keep going and you don't give up. That's the one thing I can say. Like, for instance, the community part of it is like relationships that you build, and it's like you release this other product, 30% of these people will buy every product, you know? Multi-million-dollar people go, I'm gonna start this new company. They go to those old customers that they dealt with and like, hey, you like this? Yep. Or here's a 7-figure contract. That's why they say it's easier the next time. Like, it's easier to raise money for our second company because it's like, you've done it before. You have all those relationships with investors. You've made them money. It kind of gives me heartburn though to think about starting from nothing again.
All right, Jeremy, thank you very much for coming.
I loved being on this. OPME, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you. I really do.
And I'll see you guys on the next one.